Have you ever queued into a ranked game and just get completely destroyed every time you peek? Yeah, I know, it sucks. But what if I told you that the reason why you're constantly losing your gunfights has nothing to do with your ping, not having a better setup, or a bunch of smurfs ruining your games, and has everything to do with what I'm about to cover in this video. Before we get started, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to anyone watching this video to join us over on Discord. We're a fast-growing and tight-knit group of players from all around the world who are passionate about learning, improving, and supporting one another along the way. Whether you're looking to solicit feedback for one of your games, show off your favorite moments,
no charges left.
or make friends with other players, our server is the place to be if you're looking for a fun and wholesome community. If this sounds right up your alley, click on the linky in the description to join us over on Discord. Now back to the video. The first mistake that you're probably making is not utilizing crouch as part of your movement. Now wait, I know you'll see a lot of other videos condemning the use of the crouch button. Some might even tell you to unbind crouch, which can actually do more harm than good in specific scenarios. The problem with crouching comes from players using it as a way to fully commit to a gunfight, which will make you a stationary and easy-to-hit target in most cases. However, crouching is actually a powerful way to throw off your opponent's aim when used at the appropriate timings. As you can see, opening with a crouch peek is a simple yet effective way to offset your opponent's aim and buy yourself a couple extra milliseconds of time, which can sometimes be the difference maker during a gunfight. In this clip, notice how the Clove meticulously contacts each angle by opening up with a crouch peek. This technique actually nets him a kill in the later part of the round, which you'll see in slow motion in just a couple of seconds. Notice how the change in head level actually throws off his opponent's aim, which then buys him enough time to make the micro adjustment. The secret to mastering crouch is to tap the key at the end of your movement rather than holding it down continuously. Crouching is especially good for contact plays where you want to cautiously clear your angles without making any audio cues. The next important point is understanding that aim is inherently tied to movement. To illustrate this, let's take a look at a common scenario that most players might find themselves in. Imagine you're slowly contacting up Sunset A main, and you get surprised by an opponent in an unexpected position.
Hello there.
What happens next is that most players would instantly stop moving and start frantically shooting at the enemy.
Anyway, I started blasting. Bang, bang. Now, I don't see so good, so I missed.
And while this may work in the rare occasion, it's probably safe to say that it's not the cleanest way of securing a kill. One of the biggest misconceptions about FPS games in general is that you only need a mouse to aim. And I'll show you why this is completely wrong in just a couple of seconds. So this right here is aiming using only your mouse, and is probably the first thing that comes to mind when we talk about aim. And this is aiming using only your movement. And when we combine the two, it looks a little something like this. You can see that we're using our aim and movements effect to get our crosshair to the desired position. So now that we know this information, how do we actually apply this to our ranked games? Like we discussed earlier, a common mistake that players often make is only relying on their mouse movements to control their aim. This is problematic for a number of reasons. Firstly, the instant we stop moving, we make ourselves a stationary and easy target for our opponents. And secondly, depending on the distance between the enemy and our crosshair, we may not be able to land the shot with our initial flick. This is why we sometimes feel that we don't have enough time to aim. To fix this, we're going to follow the very simple formula of moving before we shoot. Notice how this player uses his movement to adjust his aim as well as make himself a harder target for the enemy. In other words, not only can a perfectly timed strafe throw off your opponent's aim, it can also help you adjust your crosshair to line up a perfect shot. Think of your movement as a way to make your aiming more efficient. Rather than have a counteracting effect on your aim, your movement should be in place to put you in a better position to make those micro adjustments. Specifically, what you should be focusing on is the window of opportunity right at the end of your movement where your bullets become accurate. Okay, so next up, we're going to be talking about holding angles. Now, something that a lot of players don't realize is that you don't necessarily have to be hard scoping an angle for it to be considered holding. As long as you aren't actively peeking, you're technically already holding an angle. Therefore, it's important that our crosshair placement is in line with how our enemies are likely to swing us. A lot of players find themselves unable to hold angles like these. And to fix this, we first have to understand a concept that is fundamental to shooter games in general. In short, the speed and distance in which an enemy moves on your screen is relative to the distance between them and your character model. This means when an enemy is up close, they tend to move a lot faster on your screen, and vice versa if they're further away. What is probably the most common mistake in Ascendant and below is holding really tight angles like this. Notice that when we train our crosshair almost directly on the wall, we're essentially forcing ourselves to make a split-second adjustment to the enemy. This becomes even more of a problem when we start shooting too early, as not only do we have to track a moving target, but we also have to account for the recoil of our weapon. As a rule of thumb, if we know that we're about to get swung by someone up close, it's generally better to hold wider angles like these. Even if our crosshair ends up being too wide, flicking back is usually preferred to having to track a moving target. Now what if our opponent decides to jiggle us for information instead of committing to a swing? In this scenario, what is the best way to hold the angle? The short answer is, after jiggling us for information a couple of times, you can usually expect a wide swing from your opponent. So don't be overly fixated with trying to catch them in the movement, and instead, try to predict the timing of their swing. So, is holding angles really all about putting your crosshair further from the wall? Well, not exactly. What is perhaps more important is how you use your positioning to your advantage. As a rule of thumb, if you're holding an angle like this, make sure you have cover between you and your opponent. This will allow you to fall back from the angle if necessary. The only exception to this rule is if you're playing an off angle, which usually carries more inherent risk. Or if you're playing a one-and-done angle, which is basically the equivalent of going all in Texas Hold'em. I want to thank everyone on Discord as well as YouTube for continuing to watch Null Command in 2025. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't. That's all from me, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.